Hello and welcome to this week's Evolutionaries Discuss forum, where today we're talking about love. And I'm delighted to have on the call Dhyan Prasada, who is a spiritual teacher and the founder of Awakening Love. Nomanono Isaacs, who is author of Escaping Apartheid, A Letter to My Mother. Ruqayya Daville, a conscious feminist and creator of Fierce Love. And Bullock, who specializes in heart intelligence and is a sound resonance therapist. And Sass is going to start off the call with an alignment for us. So over to you, Sass.
So what I'd like to do at first is just to bring everyone into a coherent resonance in the heart field. We're all connected with our hearts and anyhow, but as this mind construct that we live in tends to pull us out of the body and into the mind, into our worries, concerns, doubts, the mental mind chatter. So whenever I start anything to do with bringing a group together, I just tune in into the stillness, invite the others to join in. And I literally just ask my heart to open so I can feel the connection coming from my higher self or source self, which connects to the heart neurons, which is the brain inside my heart, which then creates a resonance and a coherence with others in the group so that we're all coming from the same energy field. And I invite all of you who may be listening to this call to also do the same and see if you can tune in to the resonance of the group and open the heart, connect and align yourself with all of us so that it will feel like a more in-tuned connection, even though you're probably not listening to it live. So first of all, if everyone could just on the call close their eyes, and maybe those who are listening as well, just so we can center ourselves in the body, move out of the mind chatter and doubts, worries, concerns, everything that you may have brought with you on this call. So just have a few moments of just silence, maybe just connecting with the heart, since we're going to be talking about love. Place a hand on the heart center. And just all together take 3 deep breaths.
Fantastic, thank you.
You're welcome.
Wow, that's a great intro. Wonderful. So let's now come to Ruqayya. Give us your take on love.
Well, I'm a great believer because of my Sufi training. I trained under a Sufi master and for about 4 or 5 years. And his perception of love starts off with the relationship with yourself, and that you're in this amazing relationship. And it can be challenging, it can be the most joyful, and it can take you on a journey, this loving relationship with yourself. And so one of the teachings that he gave me was, it is about having this essence of understanding who you are, what your magnetic authenticity, and how you're going to radiate that out as love. And one of the things that he said is, once you've got an understanding of how you want to be loved and how you want to give love and how you want to love your experiences, plus many more, then you can start to work on your relationship with the divine, and then your relationship with other people. So it's understanding the wholeness, the imperfections, the weirdness, the fabulousness of you, and how you bring that and show up in your life. And I call this fierce love. And I call it fierce love because my own rock bottom event in my own personal life many years ago, I needed this source of energy, this source of, intention, because we believe that in Sufism, intention to move through me. And I call it fierce love. And my Fierce Love program is about reconnecting everybody and recommitting yourself to having a loving relationship with yourself.
Let's come to you, Dhyan.
My understanding of love is that love is unconditional, that we are all love, that we are all that, and that love exists before the body, before the mind, before this experience, and that the love that we share with others is in fact the love we have for ourselves, because there are no others, essentially. We are all individual divine reflections of the one.
Just to pick up on that, Dhyan, quite often you see people, for example, on Facebook posts saying, it's all perfect, it's all love. And the classic response to that, from the average person is, how can that possibly be true? I mean, if it truly was about unconditional love and it is all love, why is there war? Why is there sickness? Did these children in Syria ask to be in a war zone? So can you kind of explain, because I think this is the gap between this concept of this bliss, unconditional love fabric of the universe and 3D reality, the kind of hard reality of life. And that, I think that's the difficult thing, is to close that gap for people, or bridge that gap, shall we say.
So we exist before the mind, and it is the mind that interprets our experience of this. And the mind always wants to put things into categories: good and bad, wrong and right, hot and cold. But what's actually happening is we are simply experiencing everything exactly as it is. And what comes in with the mind is a judgment. So without judgment, everything would be as it is, which it is anyway, and there would be peace, because we wouldn't engage the mind in what was happening and make a judgment about it. So experience is happening because everybody needs to experience what they need for their growth. And often suffering is a major part of what's needed as a reminder of self. It sends us reeling back to where the truth is, which is within our own being. So we suffer and we look outside ourselves for the answers, and the suffering that appears to be outside ourselves brings us back home to our true self and our divine nature. And it's not an easy process by any means, but to see the truth is then to realise that it is the mind's engagement with the will that complicates everything.
Fabulous. Thank you, Dhyan. Nomanono, you know a lot about suffering, having been brought up in South Africa under apartheid. So talk to us about your experience of love, especially in those times of, it must have been a very challenging childhood to find love amidst that turmoil and violence and horror.
Yes, but when I look back at my experiences, even though there was pain and suffering and confusion and feeling all these things that you feel, feeling unworthy, etc., there was love from my family. That was my cocoon. There was so much love from my grandparents and relatives, extended family relations. So that was the love that, for me, when I think about it, it just like it confirms that when we come here, before we come here, we are love. And even when we experience what we see as hardships and all of that, that we get into fear and anger and all of those situations, that's still part of love, really, because all of those things propel us to wanting something better, to choosing something better. It doesn't matter how it, because we pray, oh God, I don't want to be, how can this get better? I want something better. The very fact that what is happening is making you want something better, is propelling you back home, back to love, because that's what we are, that's where we came from. And the judgments, the blaming, and the putting finger at whatever, that is also part of the experience that we experience as individuals. And sometimes we put ourselves into our own self-made hell. But as a child at that time, because of the situation they set up in South Africa, it was a hell that was set up in such a way that it affected everybody. But now, looking back and thinking about it, I'm saying to myself, really, was it really, really hell? Why did I choose to go there? Did I choose to go there because I knew that I was going to find a way to go back home to love? And those people who created the laws and everything, what if they were angels in disguise to help us, propel us to actually go back to loving each other and knowing what is good for us, knowing that, yes, we are not separate, even though they tried to separate us and categorizing us in South Africa. Basically, everything is going back to love. Even what is happening at this moment in the world is good in that it's propelling everybody to go back within themselves and find that love of everybody. That's my take.
Well, there's lots of different types of love, isn't there? There's motherly love, there's romantic love, as you mentioned in the script earlier, that you were going to look at the comparison. There's hard love or tough love. So I think love encompasses so many different things that it's difficult to pinpoint as at one particular feeling. To me, there's the romantic love, but that is not sustainable. I think that's a way of opening us up to the love that we have for ourselves by projecting it onto another. And then that opens us up to more love. But because it's a sort of based on a romantic ideal and fairy tale, it's not sustainable, because then you have to do the real work. And maybe that lasts, the romantic love, probably maybe the first 6 months, possibly a year, possibly 2, if you can really squeeze it out, if you're both very dedicated to the romantic love. It doesn't mean you can't do romantic things to one another, but that feeling of being all consumed, that every little part of you screams no to this person when you see them across a crowded room, that romantic love, for some reason, is it chemistry? Is it just the chemistry reaction you have with somebody that we then think is love? I don't, I think it's all of those things, but I think sustainable love is more based on compassion for yourself first and for others. So to me, you've got the love of the connection to source, your connection to the cosmic internet, where you can access everything, including the love, but that is a vertical connection. And then you have the horizontal connection, was can you bring that love down and share it with another, or allow another to be received by you fully? So that's what I work on, particularly as I've noticed throughout my life and with people that as they, especially people I've known when they were very young and how they've transformed as an adult, they become disconnected to love and more robotic in their behavior, more into their program and conditioning. And again, that's where the romantic love is, this ideal of what I see in the fairy tales, that's what I want for myself. So we can get very disappointed when that doesn't show up in the way that we want to. So that's a conditioned type of love. I'll give up parts of me, and if you give up parts of you that suit me and suit you. So it's, am I prepared to give parts of myself away? Now, to me, that isn't love. And I found it quite difficult to find a romantic relationship where all of myself can be loved by another. And that's a great reflection of me, and say, what parts of myself can't I love? So to me, love is about acceptance. It's about compassion. It's about being all of who you can, your authentic self, because that's love of everything within yourself. Acceptance of the good, the bad, the ugly, the warts. And to me, judgments, because Dhyan was talking about judgments, I always feel the mind is always going to judge. That's its job. It does the judging, it does the discerning. Shall I cross the road now? I'm going to get squashed by a lorry. So you could kind of call that love and self-preservation, in that you want to be here as a vehicle for divine love. So I better stay alive. So the mind's making judgments all the time, but does it prejudice you against another? That's what I always check in with. I notice my mind making a judgment about somebody or myself or my behavior, and saying, but can I accept and love it anyway, and feel at peace with all of what I am? And then I feel I have the capacity to love others. So to me, it's an ever growing, ever developing, ever expanding source that we can move into. And it's malleable. It's not stuck in one place. So I think it's really whatever love feels for you, however that runs through you, that is love. But when it comes through the mind, the filtering of the mind, and the concepts of our mind and the constraints of our mind, we move out of the heart, which is where we hear the whisperings from our divine self. And the more we can download and accept that and let that flow out, I feel the world will be full of love in a much quicker space than it is now. So that's my initial feelings on love.
At the moment, it seems to me that what is happening as I look out from my ivory tower here is a kind of great purification, actually. As the consciousness is rising, and as the kind of vibration is getting higher, anything that is not of love is showing itself to be healed, to be looked at. It feels like any place we haven't done the work, any place we haven't shone the light on, is now showing itself to be sorted. So people are manifesting problems, challenges, illness, life crises, and it's almost as if Source is shining that spotlight on anything, to show anything where we are out of alignment.
Well, for me, Rachel, we're talking about, and when you say about shining a light, to me, that's about looking at our shadows, the parts of ourselves that we have found deemed unfit for human consumption.
Yes.
And so we just sort of like found a little suitable compartment to shove it all in and lock the door and throw away the key. And then you spend the rest of your life desperately making sure that no one finds out about the secret cupboard with all the stuff in there. And it collects lots of dust and cobwebs and grime, a bit like, and I'm sure not with you, Rachel, but definitely in my house, there are some corners that have got a little bit of collection of grime. So to me, that's okay. That's for part of my shadow. Where do I need to find that? But what I've experienced is that when you actually have the courage to look at your shadow, if you can be aware of them, again, if you haven't got the light shining, that's why I work in groups. It's really, really helpful, because others can see in you what you can't see in yourself.
Yes.
So we have an exercise where we just say, the shadow I see in you is, and then the person who's received that information just lets it land, and then thank you, because it's a part of yourself where you have not loved yourself, a part that you can't accept, and it causes, it gets twisted and dark. But given shining a light on it, quite often, more often than not, I found that those parts of us that we deem unfit for human consumption, because our conditioning and people around us haven't given us a favourable response when we've expressed that part of ourselves, then we shut it down and it becomes twisted and dark. And I feel that's probably what all the problems are in the world, our unhealed shadow self. And to me, when you pour the light of love on it, and you can just turn the volume down a little bit, and thought, well, if I turn this huge bossiness that I was told I had, and you can turn it and maybe channel it in a slightly different direction. It becomes great leadership skills.
Wow, yes.
So most people's shadows, you can find they're very positive in it. And that to me is bringing more love into the world, because it's more acceptance. And once you accept something and nurture it, it then becomes beautiful rather than the horrible monster we assumed it to be.
Yeah. This is a really interesting point, actually, this idea of what's going on in the world at the moment as allowing us to look at our shadow, because that whole, as opposed to getting rid of, which is the classic thing, is to get rid of, isn't it? Get rid of all the bits. Anything in our life we don't like to get rid of.
Chop it out.
Yeah, whereas actually integration and a total acceptance of everything is the kind of ultimate solution. So, for example, I mean, I don't want to make this a Trump fest, because I'm sure everyone's fed up of discussing Donald Trump, but one of his really interesting things is that he almost has brought out everyone's reaction to every extreme masculine life character, whether it was an aggressive boss or a difficult father or, you know, bullying brothers. That's, in my case, definitely my sort of bullying brother syndrome. And it's almost like he is, as Nomanono said, is almost like an angel sent to show us all of our difficult relationship with that extreme masculine, unevolved masculine energy, shall we say. And that sounds like a judgment, Dhyan, but yes, I'm just being provocative to get some juices flowing here. So Dhyan, let's come to you on that.
So my feeling about him is that everyone is projecting all of their stuff onto him. I mean, nobody really knows who he is, because he's just being, you know, judgments are being hurled at him left, right and centre. So the actual truth of him is love, like all of us. And yet the way he's being portrayed is through everybody's projections of, you know, what they believe him to be. And so it gets very complex, because of course he's actually a construct in the mind, but that would be very challenging for a lot of people, I'm guessing.
So this comes back to the thing about how to bridge that gap, and this notion of and there are a lot of people, and I do see this, you know, in conversations on social media, a lot of people wanting to fix the world, with the problem being out there. So we've got to get rid of Donald Trump, and we've got to do this, and we've got to do that, and we've got to stop ISIS and all of the other things that we need to fix out there in the world. Getting people to understand that actually the transformation is actually an internal one, that's quite a difficult, challenging concept for most people, because there is that whole school of thought which says if we don't do anything, we are to blame, you know, we are guilty if we don't actually step in and stop what's going on, whatever that may be. And this, to me, this is a really difficult thing, because this is where this ideology around love, when it meets the hard, crunchy material realm problems of the world, that's where the whole thing it kind of loses its translation, doesn't it? No.
Okay. While we talk about love, because basically everything is love, we are love, everything. But there's something that what is happening, in my point of view, what I see is this: the love that we are collectively and as individuals, that we came as, and we continue to be deep down, because each and every one of us are divine beings, it's been suppressed by the fear that we have lived under fear, which is the opposite of love, for a very long time. Everyone has love in their hearts, but is driven by fear. The fear is the one that sort of like overrides love at this moment. And it's not a new thing as far as I'm concerned. It's been there for a long time, suppressed, and people pretending that everything is okay when it has not been okay. So it's a good time now. Everything is just thrown up to be cleared, released, cleansed. And because it needs to do that, because Earth is a planet of love in the making, and the East is the era of love, and we are being helped. Honest, I keep saying this, because I know so. We are being helped by the stars of Venus, the beings of Venus, who have been working on 2016. They are continuing on their second phase now, and it's brilliant. All of this thing needs to come out so that it's cleansed and it's so beautiful. It's all good. Even though everyone who's out there marching on the streets, they are driven by love. Trump is driven by love, blocking people or doing whatever he's doing, but there is an element of huge fear in all of these things that are happening.
Okay, Nomanono. So I'm going to be a bit provocative here, because my understanding is that it's either or. You're either in a place of love or you're in a place of fear.
So what I'm saying is, the truth of each and every human being is love. We are created as love, but we have embodied fear. And we are then at this moment being driven by fear. A lot of people are driven by fear. Trump is driven by fear, but at the same time, he is a divine being. The people who go on marching, on Standing Rock, and everyone who's protesting, ISIS and everyone, really, each and every one of us are love. We just have separated ourselves from the Creator. For centuries, we've been run or ruled. The masculine energy has been on its own without the divine feminine. But now the divine feminine and the masculine energies are coming together. It's all going to be good. It's going to work out. It's going to work out. All is going to be well. It is well already.
So, okay, to put it a different way then, when people are in fear, they have lost their connection to universal love. Would that be a better way to put it?
Yes. Yes. It's a temporary situation.
Yeah.
Because they'll go back to love.
This is kind of how, if you listen to Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, she puts it, it's like there's a cork bobbing on the ocean being pulled down by negative energy. And so she has the energetic scale where love is at the highest vibration, and kind of depression, grief, fear, anger, those kind of low vibrations are at the bottom of the scale. And so when we're in those places of low vibration, whether it is judgment, negativity, cynicism, blame, resentment, anger, grief, depression, fear, we've lost our connection to source. And in those lower vibrations, that's when people are more susceptible, for example, to disease, because the body is more open to illness. And it's disease because we're out of alignment to source energy.
Yes. But I think all of this what's happening now is really bringing everyone in the world to to source and to ourselves, because source really is not out there either. It's here. It's within each and every one of us. We are the source, and there is the source, the limitlessness and all that, but we are connected. Like we are connected to source, connected to Mother Earth or Lady Gaia, but it's all a wonderful trinity. So we are going back home.
Sorry, I was listening to all of that, and I just find, from my own personal experience, I was brought up in a very unexpressive family, where I wasn't able to express my love. It was easier to express my fear. It was easier to express my judgment, because that's what my family taught me. It was easier to be critical. than to praise. It was easier to want things but not desire things, you know. And my family, you know, as beautiful as they are, I wasn't able to express who I was. And I think a lot of our problems is we don't know how to express what we feel. And it's hard to express love. It's hard for us to really express that vulnerability of love and the openness of love, and able to sustain that kind of openness when we talk about love. Because it's easier for the heart to contract and, oh, I can't do this is too much. And it's easier then to hold back. And that's when the heartbreak comes in. Because when you're heartbroken, whether it's about society or family or grief or a relationship, that's when all the cracks open. And you feel that vulnerability. And then you're going to say, oh God, I've got to express something here. And it's so easy to close back off again. But isn't it lovely to encourage people to open up and express their vulnerability of love and understand what loving really means to them and how they want to be loved? So it's easier for us to go into, you know, I've got to hold back, I've got to retract. If you look at the heart, it has to pump, it goes open and it contracts and it opens and it contracts. This flow of beautiful energy. So when we as humans, it's so easy to be contracted. It's so easy to be in our fear because that's something that we're comfortable with.
Yeah.
To actually be in love, whether you call it romantic love, I call it that divine love, that love of self, that love of authenticity, you know, the magnetic energy. Yeah, it's really hard to sustain that. And it's hard to enter that. And it's hard to stay open. And that's when you need courage to actually say, what is love to me? How do I want to be loved? You know, what am I feeling? How am I going to express my love? That, I think, is the journey for me in my love, because I haven't been taught that. I've been taught to fear love.
Yeah.
And to fear intimacy. I've been taught to fear, you know, myself even, to be in love. What I'm seeing out in the world at the moment is that we haven't quite got to the point of actually expressing love clearly.
Yeah. So what you're saying is essentially we've closed down at the heart and we've kind of moved into the head. And most people are living from that headspace as opposed to moving down to the heart and allowing that to lead.
Yeah. And it's really frightening to lead from the heart because, you know, you have to get out your comfort zone. You have to take some risk. You have to plunge in. And
you have to be vulnerable.
You have to be vulnerable. And I'll be quite honest, when it comes to my relationships, I've chosen men purely on the fact that it was easier to be in my fear base with them than it was to be in my love base. So I knew they weren't going to last. And I know, talking about relationships, because that's one of our biggest, well, to me, they're my spiritual assignments. Do you know what I mean? They've taught me how to love, even though they can't love themselves. It sort of like gives me a mirror. That heartbreak, that vulnerability, that pain, that suffering was my turning point in understanding what love was and what love is to me.
So all relationships essentially as a gift to show us, as a mirror, to show us our own areas where our shadow is, where our healing is needed. And that is the classic reaction, isn't it? When going back to what Sass said about when a romantic relationship, after that kind of glow of the first 6 months or however long it lasts, then you get down to the kind of work of the healing and the transformation and the transmutation and the integration. And that's when a lot of people want to run away because of the discomfort of seeing themselves in that mirror and not liking it and not staying with the teaching and staying with the lesson and working it through and kind of scrapping and moving on. And so it's an interesting dynamic, isn't it?
It is. And also, we don't know how to express love. I think a lot of us are kind of like immature in that way. We haven't been taught how to express love from here. We can love from here, we can love from the womb, you know. But we're not loving from the fact that I'm going to accept all your imperfections, and I'm going to accept my own, and I'm going to work, and I'm just going to accept and be compassionate, and, you know, and be loving and be caring and be kind and be tender with myself as well as with the people that are around me. And that's really hard. It's not easy. So when I look at people at the moment that are expressing their truth, and I think they are expressing their truth, and I think they are, but I think it's about, again, that heartbreak, that suffering, that in your face moment, right? Okay, how am I going to deal with it? How am I going to respond? From fear, from love, from my heart, from my mind, from my source, from my belief, from my work, from my faith. That's really hard. People have got to work through that, and it takes time.
One of my sort of observations is that we're very much like, everything's holographic. So to me, it's very similar analogy in how you connect to the internet, for example, and how we quite often lose connection and everything goes blank, and there is no information coming in. And to me, that's what happens with the heart. The heart is a gateway, an energetic gateway to accessing pure love. But if we're cut off from it, then we can't access that love. So we move into and that feels very fearful. I sort of see it as me being sent up to the moon, and I've got all this sort of information coming from my headquarters, or whatever it's called, Euston, and I'm being given guided because I can only see a very small perspective from where my vantage point. So I'm getting information, I'm relying on that source, which has a much greater vantage point, and all of a sudden that's cut off. And it's like, help. So the fear sets in, which I think was the original sort of separation from all love. It is like we were chopped off from that. So for me, I personally have been working, having my own experience of being a parent and then being left to bring the children of my own. I found that just being in the feminine energy, I couldn't cope, because I was in that receptive, wanted to play with the children. And then there's other part of me goes, you've got to go out and get some food for these children. And so I felt moving more into the masculine energy, which was more directive and penetrating and more sort of angular in its energy. And I found that I then moved out of that feminine, vulnerable part of me, the receptive feminine energy, which is the receiving of that love, receiving of that connection. And so I feel that there's this huge shift in society where mothers have left the home, whether for good or for bad. There's a mixture of all of it in there. And we lose that communication which we have with our children, where we look into their eyes and their pure love, and it opens up our hearts. So to me, I'm working on it's not always appropriate, I don't feel, to have your heart open. If someone was aggressing on me in the street, or someone was picking a fight, to me to be all open isn't actually a safe thing to be. So it's noticing when I close so that I know how to open again. So it's appropriately opening as well in this world. Does it feel safe? So safety is a huge part of being able to love and be in that vulnerable state. Can I open to my vulnerability? Can I know that I don't have to control everything? That actually there is a much bigger guidance system, a much powerful energy than me, that is wanting to connect with me all the time and guide me. But if my gateway, my heart, is not open, I can't receive that. That's why I think there's so many problems with heart problems, why so many people have to have heart bypasses. Because we are bypassing. I don't feel with my head. I don't say I love you with all my mind, darling. I love you with all my heart, because that's where I feel your essence. That's where I feel my own essence. And I can have a construct in my mind about what love is, but it's an experience. So experiencing the more often. And what's fantastic in my circles is noticing how people are so terrified of receiving energy or asking for attention. May I have attention, please? And the disarray it throws people in, to just have everybody's focus on them. And I'm saying that, isn't it interesting, because most people, if they admit to it, would love attention, but when they're actually given it, it feels very exposing, and it feels like everyone's looking at you, and it feels very uncomfortable. So I would say that we find it more difficult to receive love and to be in a state of reception, or receptive state, receiving compliments. How many of us are good at actually letting a compliment land and really taking it in, which is love. It's a gift. Someone's giving you a gift. So if somebody says to you, hi, you look absolutely gorgeous today, your hair looks beautiful, and you immediately go, oh God, I haven't had it cut for ages, it's really greasy and it's a real mess, but anyway, thanks. And so that gift is refused. So then people start to not offer those gifts because they're not well received. So I think people are fearful of their magnificence and their love and their power, and the fear is a sort of an easier energy to go with, and it's more rampant. So it tends to dominate the energy field.
Yeah.
And but when you come together with other people who are wanting to open their heart, the resonance fields create this huge love, which is why we all feel so connected to one another, even just strangers in a small space of time. I'm hearing people who've only met each other an hour and a half ago saying, I feel so much love for you, and I don't know how. I don't feel this much love for my husband, so how can I feel? And it's because you're speaking the language of the heart.
Yes.
And when you learn the language of the heart, which is like kids know it, don't they? And then they get broken down and lifted into the mind through the schooling, and they lose that connection of being able to connect heart and speak the language of the heart.
Interesting that what you said earlier, Sass, about the sort of inner masculine and feminine, because quite by chance I was looking at something earlier, and the I Ching, the hexagram for peace, is total yin, earth, over yang, that total masculine, and that is the hexagram for peace. So that absolute balance between masculine and feminine, which we're kind of looking for in romantic relationships, aren't we?
Yes.
We're kind of looking for the perfect man to match our perfect feminine, whereas actually that is really internal work. And that's a really interesting thing about how our relationships reflect our inner struggle with the masculine, feminine.
Amount of women I know said, when I've opened to my femininity, I suddenly get guys coming on to me, and it's scary. So then they bring up the wall and they go into the masculine again. And then you get that competition and that sort of fieriness in relationships, because we're matching the masculine energy. And so two bulls are coming head on.
So something that's coming up for me to express is around romantic love, and how when we're looking for a relationship, essentially we're looking outside of ourselves to fulfill something that we believe is missing. In that moment, we believe that we're not complete and whole, and so we need someone else to complete that for us. And when that's not given back, not received, it sends us into pain. And there is a possibility in the pain, if we are willing to get incredibly vulnerable and walk into it and be with it and not distract ourselves from it in any way, and this could last for a few days, to actually alchemically transmute the pain into love that we are. And so through that process of allowing ourselves to go into it, and essentially that's our shadow side too that everybody's mentioned, and this is where we are bringing our consciousness into our shadow, and it's not to push anything away or to disregard anything at all, because everything that we are is perfect. The ego, the shadow, whatever people want to attempt to get rid of is needed for our growth. And so if we can be warriors of love and allow ourselves to go into the darkest places, the deepest places, the most uncomfortable, we can completely transmute and transform that experience from one of unrequited love and deep, deep pain, emotional, physical, mental pain, into one of complete and utter freedom and unconditional love that we could not have experienced through that relationship.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Thank you, Dhyan.
Basically, talking about romantic love briefly is just to say the romantic love that we are experiencing at this moment, we've been experiencing for years, is conditional love. If you love me, I will love you. If you don't, that's it. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to really mention earlier on is about the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and the tendency not to think that we are thinking of masculine as we see male and female on the earth plane, but we look at it as the consciousness, which is not a form, but the consciousness of the divine feminine and the consciousness of the divine masculine. And my understanding is that until they work together, because when one works and the other one doesn't, things don't work out. But if we aim, our aim, and we ask to be guided to embrace the divine union, which means that then we have the balanced divine masculine and the balanced divine feminine within us. We can always ask the universe and just ask for the balanced divine union, which is basically the divine masculine and the divine feminine, the consciousness, not necessarily the male and female of the earth, no, but that's all I just wanted to say, that we can always ask and we will get. If you don't ask, you don't get. If you ask, you get. Ask, it is given.
Fantastic. Okay, Nomanono. Well, thank you all so much for coming on. Thank you, Dhyan Prasada, Nomanono Isaacs, Ruqayya Daville, and Sas Bullock. So have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you.